Lazarus must testify before the Sanhedrin. This glimpse of omnipotence that the Son of Man had deliberately and subtly carried out within the sphere of influence of Jerusalem had little to no effect on the attitude of the religious leaders, except that it hastened their decision to destroy Jesus and put an end to his work. Very soon after the news that a man had returned from the dead had spread throughout Jerusalem, the Sanhedrin convened an emergency meeting. However, their issue was not the miracle itself, but rather they deliberated. What shall we do with Jesus of Nazareth? After discussions and heated debates lasting more than 2 hours, a certain Pharisee submitted a motion urging that Jesus must put to death immediately, arguing that Jesus posed a threat to all of Israel. The accuser argued that the Sanhedrin was formally obligated to pronounce the death sentence without further judicial inquiry. Time and again this high council of Jewish leaders had ordered that Jesus be taken into custody and subjected to judicial examination. There were charges of blasphemy and numerous other accusations such as that he had trampled on the holy Jewish law. Once before they had even gone so far as to publicly declare in the council chamber that he must die. Something that some of them had advocated in back rooms many times before. But this was the first time that the Sanhedrin had openly and formally demanded that his death sentence be pronounced without any prior judicial inquiry. But this motion did not come to a vote because 14 members opposed it morally and threatened to resign if such an unprecedented measure was carried out. But the powers in the Sanhedrin were determined, and they began a procedure to remove these 14 morally opposed Pharisees. It took almost 2 weeks for this resignation process to be formally completed. Once again, the injustice that occurs everywhere and at all times, when those in power feel constrained, happened here as well. In their zeal to manage their so-called crises, they often fall into the immoral trap of eliminating any critical voice and changing laws to grant themselves more authority. On this day, a group of 14 Pharisees was silenced, never to participate in council meetings again. When this resignation process was later addressed, 5 other members were also expelled because they were suspected of being favorable to Jesus. Now that these 19 men had been removed, the Sanhedrin was able to prosecute and convict Jesus with an almost unanimous consensus. The following week, Lazarus and his sisters were summoned to appear before the Sanhedrin. After hearing their testimony, there could be no doubt that Lazarus had been raised from the dead. Remarkably, the Sanhedrin acknowledged the resurrection of Lazarus, but attributed it, along with all other miracles performed by Jesus, to the power of the prince of devils, with whom they declared Jesus was in alliance. Regardless of the source of his power to perform miracles, these Jewish leaders were convinced that if he was not stopped immediately, all the common people would soon believe in him. They argued that there would be serious uprisings against the Roman authorities, as many of his followers regarded him as the Redeemer of Israel. They feared that Jesus might at some point incite zealot sentiments. The Jewish leaders knew very well that the Jews were militarily no match for the superior Roman legions. At this same meeting of the Sanhedrin, Caiaphas, the high priest, for the first time uttered the old Jewish saying, which he would repeat many times thereafter. It is better that one man dies than that the community perishes. That same evening they formulated charges. They accused Jesus on the following grounds. 1. He is a friend of tax collectors and sinners. He welcomes the ungodly and even eats with them. 2. He is a blasphemer. He speaks of God as if he is his father and thinks that he is equal to God. 3. He is a lawbreaker. He heals the sick on the Sabbath and disregards the holy law of Israel in many other ways. 4. He is in alliance with the devils. He performs miracles and apparent wonders through the power of Beelzebub, the prince of devils. Although Jesus was warned about the activities of the Sanhedrin, he was not in the least worried and remained in Judea for a few more days. He stayed overnight with friends in a hamlet nearby Bethany. Early Sunday morning, Jesus and the apostles gathered at the house of Lazarus as arranged, and after bidding farewell to the family, they began their journey back to the camp at Pella.